Hi class, for this lecture we're going to look at cultural evolution. Cultural evolution is simply noting that cultures change over time and for a number of factors, but those changes, they seem to go from simple to more complex. However, we do have variabilities in that. The how, the what, the where, and the when cultures change, that depends on environmental, social factors, and just another number of different reasons. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at unilinear evolution and multicultural evolution. We've kind of already discussed these a little bit more, but with this lecture we're going to look at the two models that they have of cultural evolution. So as always, this information will be on the quiz, so make sure that you take notes. However, you can always find it in the transcripts to get information with that. So let's begin. All cultures organize themselves based on population. And for the majority of cultures, they all start out as small family units. And we can think about that in our own lives, how we all start out in our family group. And so we all start out in these small family units, and then we kind of grow from there and expand out from there. So the 4 stages of cultural evolution based on multicultural evolution theory, we see that simple to complex, to where all cultures start out, not all cultures, but where cultures can start out as these small group bands and kind of tribal organizations, and they move up to chiefdoms and to societies. So our first stage is bands. And so we know they're small kinship units, and kinship is just another way to say family. We say that they're mostly hunter-gatherers. And nomadic. And we would say, like, people prehistorically, like Paleo Indians and archaic groups, they were more likely hunter and gatherers. And then say, like, Stone Age cultures would be hunters and gatherers. So we kind of see this level of cultural organization as far back in time as Neanderthals, and maybe even with Australopithecine, so even further back than that. So with our next stage, tribal organizations. So our next stage is tribes. What we still have is we have the family group, but what it is it's a mix of family groups living together. So they're rather sedentary, which means they stay in one place, and then this allows for this allows for more organization on the social, political, and economic levels, because we have this mix of different groups of people, so we're able to, be able to share new ideas and technologies and all sorts of other things, and, that helps make that group more cohesive. So our next level is chiefdoms. And with this, we just kind of see we're kind of building on the bands and the tribes. At the chiefdom level, we still have that mix of groups. But we're now at the organization level, to where we have centralized rule. And so at this level, we start to see, we have more population, so that means more procurement of resources, and we see our organization levels, getting more refined, and kind of at this level is where we get to agriculture and intensified agriculture, and kind of like the horticulture of using animals. So then from this state, we just move up to the state stage of cultural evolution. So our last stage is the state level. And at the state level, this is when we see just, much larger populations, and we see more distinction on things like class structure and political and social and economic organizations. So with states, we can be egalitarian or non-egalitarian. So egalitarian, that would be kind of like a democracy where, we still have different social levels you have to navigate in society, but class distinction is not as apparent, you could say, as it is with non-egalitarian. So this would probably be like totalitarian, authoritarian type government, or even something like a monarchy, because, you had those distinct class levels. And this is kind of what sets this state apart from the other three, because we don't see that class distinction as much with our first three levels of bands, tribes, and chiefdoms. But when we get here, we do. And at this point, too, is when we start getting that specialization of the labor force, so that we have that, we're generating profit, and we have people to work for us, and, we have that incentive of we get a paycheck for the work we do. So with all the different stages of cultural evolution and cultures that we discuss, we see there are three defining aspects that, no matter what level of culture is at, what stage, or what type of culture it is, these are the three ingredients we have to have for culture. And the first one is division of labor. Gender roles, and reciprocity. And reciprocity, that's just simply give and take. It's like exchange. And, the way a culture is set up is how these factors play out in that culture. But, when we have a lot of people trying to work together, we have to assign, everybody's got to be doing something, or, that society will not function, because we're social creatures and we need each other. So we have to kind of make these kind of rules and define these ways to go about being in society and working together so that we can function. And as I said, the multicultural evolution theory, stages of cultural evolution, that was created by Julian Stewart, and it was just kind of his argument against unilinear evolution, and the fact that unilinear evolution thinks that everything is pretty static, it's stasis, and evolution goes in a line, and it doesn't deviate from that. Well, okay, so now we're going to look at unilinear evolution and its stages of cultural development. With unilinear evolution, we're saying that the stages of cultural development are set. We go from point A to point B, and there's no variation in between, and all cultures will go through that. So if we look around and we see differences in the way cultures are organized now, some researchers would argue, based on the unilinear evolution theory, that they haven't reached that stage of development yet. They haven't gotten to the advanced stage that kind of like we are in the modern industrial world. And the fact that we know that things change at their own rates, is kind of why people were going against the unilinear model. And that's why we see how Stewart, was really opposed to that. And the 4 stages of cultural development based on unilinear theory was created by anthropologist Herbert Spencer. And these 4 stages we're getting ready to discuss, for Spencer, every culture went through this. Like I was just kind of saying, every culture went through it. If they haven't yet, they will go through it. And he puts a heavy emphasis on division of labor and subsistence. basically just like getting food. So with this emphasis on division of labor and subsistence, what we see is that as our stages advance under this model, it's kind of that we see more populations, that means more organization and more procurement of resources, and so on and so forth. So our first stage under this model is hunter and gatherer. And you'll see how we kind of, the stages kind of mix, because we kind of talked about hunter and gatherer at the band level, and so, they mix a little bit, but, the difference is that with multicultural, we recognize diversity. With this one, we're set. We say, no, this is how it is. So, we have our hunter and gatherer stage, and at this stage, we see those small family units. We see that kind of nomadic, semi-sedentary. And, they're semi-sedentary. It's probably based on, like, migration patterns of animals that they were hunting. And, seasonal. If, the seasons changed or if resources ran out in one area, they would move on to their next area. From the hunter and gatherer stage, we then move up to pastoralism. And so with this stage, we have domestication of animals. And we see that they're semi-sedentary. Migrating with the herds. And seasons once again. From the pastoral stage, we then move up to our third stage, and that is agriculture and horticulture. And horticulture is just using animals and humans to do work. And at this stage, we see an explosion of the population. And we see change in the division of labor. And this stage kind of puzzles researchers. We're kind of puzzled over why we changed from that hunter-gatherer lifestyle, which was really less labor-intensive, to all of a sudden doing agriculture, which it's a lot of hard work. And the reason we think it has to do with population. As more people started coming into the society, you had to be able to sustain those people more and allocate the resources more. And so we start to kind of see really the beginnings of kind of advanced social, political, and economic organization starting at this level. And one of the things that makes this harder too is, like I said, since it is so labor intensive, what we did was we changed to agrarianism. And that's basically, it's just making the work more efficient, making the humans and the animals work more efficiently so that you can, procure those resources better. So with our last stage of cultural evolution based on unilinear theory is the state commerce. Well, it's commerce level in this one. It's kind of compared to the state level in our other one. So it's commerce, industrial. And what we have here is now we kind of take everything from the previous states and we learned how to monetize it. So We just learned how to monetize plants and animals, basically, our resources. And right now, we're at the commerce level of society, and it's just going to be interesting to see how we evolve. And prehistoric people, they seem to work more with their natural environments, and there seems to be more of a balance of the resources there. And that's not always the case, because, you know, we have examples of civilizations that, you know, once their populations got too big, and, you know, maybe it could have been because they didn't have enough resources, caused their downfall. Nonetheless, it's going to be interesting to see where we evolve from here. And this wraps up our lecture on cultural evolution. And as always, if you have any questions or need any help, please let me know. Continue striving for excellence. You can do it. Thanks.